Alright, watch fam, welcome to my review of the Maen, or I don't know if it's Maen, but I'm going to say Maen just for the purpose of this review. The Maen Skymaster 38 MK2 Panda retails starting at just a little bit over $1,000. That is because the watch does feature some customizations. For one, you get your choice of the Hesselite domed crystal or the sapphire crystal. You also get your option of a leather strap or a bracelet, which I have featured here on I have both of the leather strap and the bracelet, and we're going to talk a little bit about this watch and my initial thoughts. Before we get started, I am wearing my Rolex American Kermit today. But let's get the obvious out the way. So this watch is inspired by the Omega Speedmaster. There are some obvious similarities. One, you can think about the name, Speedmaster, Skymaster. However, there are quite a few features that allow the Maen to stand out on its own. For starters, instead of a tachymeter bezel, you get a rotating bezel at the top, which allows you to track a second time zone. You do not get a, clicky bezel like you do on the Manta. However, I do feel like that is a useful feature. You can apply indices on the other Speedmasters, and all Speedmasters primarily you're going to get painted indices unless you're looking at something that's a limited edition. I also like the hand choice. I don't necessarily love the box style square second hand, but I do think it works for this watch. So let's dive into the watch. As always, we're going to start with my favorite feature of the watch, which is the dial. So Maen says the dial color is Panda. While that is the case, it is really hard to see if this is a white or silver dial. I definitely have the dial sitting more in the silver family. Think the IWC Portuguese or Chronograph. It is definitely more silver than it is white, but in most lights this can pass for an eggshell or off-white dial, and I found that this watch looks really great on the wrist. When you start to zoom in on the watch, I think this is where I've seen other micro brands deliver better finishing than what Maen has been able to deliver here. For starters, these indices look very rough from a finishing perspective. After looking at brands like Christopher Ward that is delivering some really high quality finishing for just a little bit more than what Maen is charging, I did expect to see pretty clean execution here. The hands are not bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think these are basic hands. So for me, this watch, when you look at it, it comes down to the dial. For some reason, despite these flaws that drove me nuts, from the bezel being a little bit looser than what I would like, when you look down at the wrist, the watch does really stand out and it looks simply incredible. This made me feel like I was wearing a very high-end fashion watch. And I say fashion watch because the quality on some of the bits are not there. So the dial do feature 3 sub registers at 3, 6, and 9. So very similar to the Speedmaster configuration, and you just have white paint for the numeral and the indices. You also have these circular grain-ins that make the sub registers get a little bit more contrast on the dial. And at 12 o'clock, you have Maen Skymaster automatic. I love that they chose to put all the font in one area. So the watch dial is a little bit busy. It's not the most legible dial. However, again, you're getting a Panda chronograph in the perfect size case, which we will talk a little bit about next. So this is the part of the watch that I feel is lacking the most, which is a little bit unfortunate because this could have been a really perfect $1,000 watch. But let's talk a little bit about the case. So for starters, this case is 38 millimeters, which is becoming the most popular size it appears for chronographs, and I think especially chronographs that are well executed. You also get 46 millimeter lugs, which allows us to accommodate a lot of different wrist sizes. This is definitely designed for people with smaller wrists than mine. However, you can see that this wears exceptionally well, even on my 7¼ inch wrist. It's definitely not too thick, coming in at 10.9 millimeters. Even if you add in the sapphire crystal, you are going to be at 12.9 millimeters. So a reasonably thick chronograph, which is really hard to come by. You get 5 ATMs of water resistance, which I believe is like 50 meters, so adequate for washing your hands in light rain, nothing really else. But when you look at the case construction, this is where I feel that Maen definitely falls short from some of the other micro brands. Outside of this brush finishing and a little bit of polishing along the top of the lugs, that is really all the case finishing you get. It is a very boxy case, and I find the edges to be really sharp. But I do find that there's not a lot of case design work on this watch, which again is unfortunate because the dial work is really, really incredible. True to the era this watch was inspired from, you have these really cool pump style pushers that really stand out on the side of the case. So aesthetically, when you look at the watch, particularly on the bracelet, which is a very nice executed, it looks very similar to the Omega Speedmaster bracelet. The watch really does look amazing. It looks really expensive, definitely more expensive than what it feels. I am not saying this watch is not worth the $1,000. I actually think it is priced rather appropriately. Actually, there is a little bit of value proposition here. You are getting an ETA-based chronograph. So this is the 2894-2 automatic movement. So what you're getting is a modular chronograph. There's some significant advantages of this. One, allowing this watch to come in substantially thinner than anything that was going to be based off the 7750 Voyager movement. However, one limitation is that these are harder to service. So, if you need this service down the road, not all watchmakers can service this, which may mean you have to rely on sending it back to the manufacturer or finding a really experienced watchmaker. The other downside is that this does not have a vertical clutch from my understanding, which means that if you like to keep your center seconds running on your chronograph, that could add potentially more wear and tear on the chronograph movement. If this does have a vertical clutch and someone was able to validate that, please correct me in the comments. Lastly, the case do have some nice features that I want to talk about. For starters, you do get a signed stamped crown with the M logo, which I think is a nice touch. You also have drilled lug holes to allow for easy strap changing, which is great because obviously this watch is going to be a strap monster given that it's a Panda dial watch. Moving on to the bracelet, as I said, the bracelet full articulating, which is pretty nice. I did find that the bracelet was pretty comfortable. Again, I can't put my finger on it, but when you compare this to the half of a Speedmaster, you can definitely feel the quality difference. That is not a shade on Maen. I think, again, to deliver a chronograph for just at $1,000 is really hard to do. And these gentlemen over at Maen have done a great job designing a really, really great chronograph. So flipping the watch over, we talked a little bit about the movement, but we do get some nice decoration. We get a signed rotor that says Maen on the rotor. We have some nice perlaging going around the bridge and some Geneva striping. But again, being that this is a modular chronograph, we do not get to see any of the other chronograph components. So who is this watch for? So this is a watch for a collector that really is looking for value in the micro brand segment. While Maen doesn't have the finishing of a Christopher Ward, Manta, or Oak and Oscar, I actually think those are like probably the three micro brand royalty. For $1,000 for a Swiss-made chronograph, it's really hard to imagine a world where you can deliver much better finishing and execution while still turning a profit. If I had $1,000 to spend on a watch, this one is worth the consideration. There is a lot of watches worth the consideration, with that being said. So I don't know if Maen has done enough to deserve your exclusive attention, but if you love a Panda dial and the dimensions sound right, and I will tell you 38 millimeters for a chronograph that is executed like this does look great on a wide variety of wrists, this might be the watch for you. However, there are, like I was saying earlier, a lot of different watches in that $1,000 price point. So this kind of gets down to a battle of complications. If you're looking for a chronograph, I can't steer you in very many directions. If you want to stay about $1,000, for a few more $100, you can upgrade to the Hamilton Intramatic, which I believe is a very respectable chronograph. You also have the Longines Big Eye for about $1,400 to $1,700, depending on where you're looking, particularly in a used market. If you don't mind going down to a little bit cheaper of a route, you have the Laurier, which I reviewed already on the channel, which I also think is a very great looking watch. You're dealing with a little bit different of an aesthetic there, definitely more vintage inspired, a little bit thinner, but I would tell you from a look and feel standpoint, the Maen is definitely a step above the Laurier from a quality perspective, but not as much as you will think. I think the bracelets are very similar in execution. I think the casework are probably very similar in execution. Where Maen really starts to separate itself is when you really start to look at the apply indices. Maen does a really great job with the apply indices, even though the finishing is not what I would want it to be. It is definitely a step up from the Laurier. And then also where you're going to get a Swiss automatic movement. As always, thank you for taking time to watch my video. If you haven't done so always, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It is definitely helping. As I said in my last video, if I can get 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, I will work on my full State of the Collection video, which I think would be awesome. If you haven't done so already, please follow me on Instagram, JWillStudio. This is where I post all my other watch related content and what I'm wearing. So as always, thank you for watching. I will see you all soon.